November 3, 2024. Marcus Escobar walked through the glass doors of El Paso Police Department carrying a black duffel bag with exactly $1 million. His hands weren't shaking. His voice didn't crack when he asked to speak to Detective Rodriguez about 3 cold cases from 2009. What happened in the interrogation room changed everything the Texas Rangers thought they knew about the Juarez cartel wars. Within 24 hours, 6 federal agents were under investigation. 2 judges received death threats, and Marcus Escobar's daughter, Sofia, watched the news from a motel room, realizing she had just destroyed the only man who ever protected her. The next morning, Marcus was found dead in his holding cell, apparent suicide. But the surveillance footage told a different story, a story that someone paid $2 million to bury. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The surveillance footage would later show exactly 47 seconds of missing time. 47 seconds where the camera feed cut to static, then resumed with Marcus Escobar's body hanging from a bedsheet noose tied to the cell's ventilation grate. Detective Carmen Rodriguez stared at the frozen frame on her computer screen, her coffee growing cold in the fluorescent hum of the El Paso Police Department's basement evidence room. She'd watched the footage 16 times since finding Marcus's body 3 hours ago. 16 times, and those 47 seconds never made sense. Convenient glitch, she muttered, clicking replay again. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m. when the static began. When it cleared at 3:18, Marcus was dead. But something bothered her beyond the obvious technical impossibility. In the last clear frame before the feed cut out, Marcus had been sitting on his cot, very much alive, reading something he'd pulled from his shoe. Her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number, stop watching the tape. Some secrets are worth more than the truth. Rodriguez's hand instinctively moved to her service weapon. She'd been a cop for 12 years, worked narcotics for 8 of them. She knew when someone was watching her watch them. The basement evidence room suddenly felt smaller. The fluorescent lights hummed louder. Every shadow seemed deeper than it had 5 minutes ago. She grabbed the footage hard drive and her case files, stuffing everything into her bag. The elevator couldn't come fast enough. As the doors opened on the main floor, she nearly collided with Captain Morrison, whose face carried the grim expression of a man delivering bad news. Rodriguez. My office. Now. Morrison's office overlooked the parking lot where, 12 hours earlier, Marcus Escobar had stepped out of his silver pickup truck with $1 million in cash and a story that had already gotten him killed. Through the window, Rodriguez could see crime scene tape still fluttering around Marcus's truck like yellow prayer flags. The FBI's taking over, Morrison said without preamble, effective immediately. Hand over everything, files, evidence, that footage you've been obsessing over. Captain, this isn't suicide. The timeline doesn't work. The camera malfunction happens all the time. Our system's older than dirt. Morrison's voice carried a finality that made Rodriguez's stomach clench. Look, Carmen, I know you liked the guy. Hell, we all did after what he told us yesterday. But sometimes the guilt catches up. 15 years is a long time to carry that weight. Rodriguez studied her captain's face. In 12 years, she'd never seen Morrison back down from a case. The man had fought the FBI, the DEA, and the Texas Rangers when they tried to muscle in on local investigations. Now he was practically gift-wrapping this one for the feds. What aren't you telling me? Morrison's jaw tightened. I'm telling you to drop it. Consider that an order. And if I don't? Then you'll end up like Marcus. And I don't mean dead. Morrison opened his desk drawer and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Internal Affairs has been building a file on you for 6 months. Missing evidence from drug busts. Unexplained cash deposits in your checking account. Association with known criminals. Rodriguez felt the blood drain from her face. Those are lies. Are they? Because the documentation looks pretty convincing. Bank records, witness statements, surveillance photos. Morrison's voice softened with something that might have been sympathy. Walk away, Carmen. Forget Marcus Escobar ever existed. Forget the money, forget the confession, forget whatever he showed you in that interrogation room yesterday. But Rodriguez couldn't forget, wouldn't forget. Because Marcus Escobar hadn't confessed to 3 murders yesterday, he'd confessed to witnessing them. And the names he'd given weren't cartel soldiers or street dealers. They were cops, judges, federal prosecutors, people who were supposed to be the good guys. I need time to think. You've got until end of shift to clean out your desk and hand over the files. After that, this becomes someone else's problem. Rodriguez left Morrison's office feeling like she was walking through quicksand. Every step toward her desk felt heavier than the last. The bullpen, usually buzzing with activity, seemed unnaturally quiet. Officers who normally joked with her suddenly found their paperwork fascinating. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The smart play was to follow orders, keep her job, her pension, her life. But Marcus Escobar had sacrificed everything to bring her the truth, and now he was dead. Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Your daughter walks home from school down Alameda Street every day at 3:15. Pretty girl. Shame if something happened to her. Rodriguez's blood turned to ice. Maria was 14, all legs and attitude, the kind of kid who thought she was invincible. She checked her watch. 3:10 p.m. This was how it started. This was how good people became part of the machine they'd sworn to fight. But as Rodriguez grabbed her keys and ran for the parking garage, she made a different choice. She was going to find out who killed Marcus Escobar, even if it killed her too. Crown Vic screamed through the afternoon traffic, her emergency lights cutting through the maze of cars on Montana Avenue. The radio crackled with routine patrol calls, domestic disturbances, fender benders, the mundane crimes that filled a Tuesday in El Paso. Nothing about murdered witnesses or threatened children. She took the turn onto Alameda Street too fast, tires squealing against the asphalt. The speedometer hit 40 in a 25 zone, but math was simple. 3:10 p.m. when she'd left the station, 3:15 when Maria got out of school. 5 minutes to cover 8 miles of city traffic. The phone call came at 3:14. Maria's voice, bright with teenage exasperation. "Mom, seriously? You're being paranoid again." Rodriguez pulled over so hard she nearly jumped the curb. Her hands shook as she gripped the phone. "Where are you?" "At school." "Where else would I be? You told me to call when I got out, remember?" Maria's voice carried that particular mix of affection and annoyance that only teenagers could perfect. "Are you okay? You sound weird." Through her windshield, Rodriguez watched ordinary life unfold on Alameda Street. A woman pushing a stroller, her toddler pointing at a neighbor's dog. An elderly man watering his brown lawn with stubborn determination. The ice cream truck making its rounds, its tinkling melody a soundtrack to suburban innocence. "Stay at school," Rodriguez said. "I'm coming to get you, but I'm supposed to walk to Jenny's house. We have that chemistry project. Not today. Please, mija. Just stay where you are." The silence stretched long enough for Rodriguez to count her heartbeats. "Finally, this is about work, isn't it? The dangerous stuff you never talk about." Smart kid. Too smart. Maria had inherited Rodriguez's ability to read between lines, to sense when the adults were scared. It was a gift and a curse in a cop's family. "Just stay there. I'll explain later." Rodriguez ended the call and sat in the suffocating heat of her parked car. The air conditioning wheezed against the West Texas sun, fighting a losing battle. She thought about Marcus Escobar, about the way he'd looked in that interrogation room yesterday, haunted but relieved, like a man finally ready to stop running from his ghosts. He'd pulled out that photograph first. A girl, maybe 16, with Maria's same bright eyes and defiant smile. "My daughter Sophia," he'd said. "Everything I did to keep her safe. But you can't wash blood off money, detective. It stains everything it touches." Rodriguez had seen plenty of criminals blame their families for their choices. But Marcus wasn't a criminal. Not really. He was something worse. A good man who'd made terrible choices for all the right reasons. The kind of man who walked into a police station with $1 million because he'd finally realized that some prices were too high to pay. Now he was dead, and someone was threatening Maria. Her phone buzzed. Text message. "Smart girl, your daughter. Shame she got your curiosity. Drop the Escobar case, detective. Final warning." Rodriguez screenshotted the message, then forwarded it to her personal email. If they wanted to play games, she'd play by different rules. She pulled back onto Alameda Street, but instead of heading to Maria's school, she turned toward the address Marcus had given her yesterday. His house, the place where his own daughter was probably wondering why her father hadn't come home. The Escobar house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in the Cielo Vista neighborhood, a modest two-story with desert landscaping and a basketball hoop mounted above the garage door. Rodriguez parked across the street and watched for signs of life. A silver SUV in the driveway, newspapers scattered on the lawn, mail spilling from an overstuffed box. No one had told Sofia Escobar that her father was dead. Rodriguez checked her watch, 3:47 p.m. She had maybe an hour before Captain Morrison expected her to clean out her desk, before the FBI swooped in and buried Marcus's confession under federal jurisdiction and bureaucratic red tape, before the corruption he'd exposed got sanitized into classified files that would never see daylight. She thought about the names Marcus had whispered in that interrogation room. Judge Patricia Vance, who'd dismissed dozens of cartel cases on procedural technicalities. Federal prosecutor William Hayes, who'd somehow never managed to make charges stick against certain high-profile dealers. Detective Lieutenant James Crawford, who always seemed to know which raids to avoid. People who were supposed to protect and serve. People who'd sold their oaths for cartel money and blood diamonds. Rodriguez got out of her car and walked toward the Escobar house. Someone needed to tell Sofia that her father was gone. Someone needed to ask her about the secrets he'd died protecting. As she climbed the front steps, she noticed the door was slightly ajar. Not much, just a crack, like someone had closed it but forgotten to check the latch. The kind of detail that made veteran cops reach for their weapons. Rodriguez drew her service pistol and pushed the door open with her shoulder. "Sofia? Sofia Escobar?" The house answered with silence that felt wrong, heavy with absence and fear. She stepped across the threshold, not knowing she was walking into a trap 15 years in the making. The first thing Rodriguez noticed was the smell, not death or violence, but something else. Coffee, still warm. Toast, half-eaten on a plate by the kitchen counter. The television murmured in the living room, tuned to a Spanish telenovela where beautiful people argued about beautiful problems. Someone had been here recently. Someone had left in a hurry. Sofia Rodriguez called again, her voice echoing off hardwood floors and family photographs. Her weapon stayed raised as she moved through the house, following the textbook pattern she'd learned at the academy. Check corners, watch for movement, trust your instincts. The living room looked like a normal teenager lived here. Backpack thrown over a chair, textbooks scattered across the coffee table, a laptop open to a social media page. But something felt staged, too perfect, like someone had arranged the mess to tell a specific story. Rodriguez moved toward the hallway, past framed photos that told the story of Marcus Escobar's life after the DEA. Sofia's school pictures, year by year, watching a gap-toothed little girl grow into a young woman with her father's serious eyes. Marcus at her graduation from 8th grade, beaming with pride. The two of them at some kind of carnival, sharing cotton candy and laughing at something outside the frame. No pictures of the mother, no family portraits beyond father and daughter. The silence stretched until Rodriguez heard it, a faint mechanical hum coming from upstairs. She took the steps slowly, her service weapon tracking ahead of her. The sound grew louder, a computer printer, churning out pages. Sofia's bedroom door stood open. Inside, a desktop computer sat on a white desk, its monitor glowing with an active email account. The attached printer was spitting out what looked like bank statements, page after page of financial records dating back years. Rodriguez approached the computer carefully, her finger still on the trigger. The email account belonged to someone called Miguel Memory, and the inbox was full of messages with subject lines that made her blood run cold. Payment confirmations to Judge Vance Crawford's monthly take, January Hayes prosecution schedule, advance warning. She scrolled down through dozens of emails, each one documenting a different transaction, a different betrayal. The corruption Marcus had confessed to wasn't just what he'd witnessed, it was what he'd helped orchestrate. The money he'd brought to the police station wasn't his attempt at redemption. It was evidence. The printer stopped. In the sudden silence, Rodriguez heard what sounded like a phone ringing downstairs. She moved toward the sound, but as she reached the living room, her own phone buzzed. Text message from the same unknown number that had threatened Maria. Check the laptop. Rodriguez looked at Sofia's computer, still open on the coffee table. The screen had changed while she was upstairs. Now it showed a video call interface, with an incoming call from unknown user. Against every instinct screaming at her to leave, Rodriguez answered. The face that appeared on screen belonged to a young woman with Marcus Escobar's dark eyes and determined jaw. She sat in what looked like a motel room, cheap wood paneling and industrial carpet visible behind her. "Detective Rodriguez," Sofia Escobar said. Her voice was steady, controlled. Not the voice of a kidnapped teenager. "I was wondering when you'd come. Sofia, where are you? Are you hurt?" "I'm exactly where I need to be." Sofia leaned forward, her face filling the screen. "Did you find the emails upstairs? The bank records?" Rodriguez felt the world shift beneath her feet. "You sent them to print." "I've been watching the house through the security cameras since this morning, waiting for someone to come looking for answers." Sofia's smile held no warmth. "I needed to see if you were working for them or against them." "Who's them, Sofia?" "The same people who killed my Uncle Miguel 15 years ago. The same people who've been paying my father to keep quiet ever since." Sofia's voice hardened. "The same people who think they can buy their way out of justice." Rodriguez sank onto the couch, her weapon finally lowering. "Your father came to us voluntarily. He was trying to make things right." "My father was trying to save himself." Sofia's eyes blazed with teenage righteous anger. "Do you know what it's like growing up thinking your dad's a hero? Learning he was DEA, that he fought the bad guys, and then finding out he's been taking cartel money for 15 years to keep quiet about the cops and judges who helped kill his own brother?" The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Marcus Escobar hadn't confessed out of guilt. He'd confessed because his daughter had discovered the truth, and he'd rather go to prison than have her hate him forever. "Sofia, you need to come in. Let me help you." "Help me?" Sofia laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. "Detective, I've spent 3 months planning this, copying files, gathering evidence, setting up offshore accounts. I know exactly who's been taking money and for how long. I know which cases got thrown out, which raids got compromised, which dealers walked free because my father gave them advance warning." Rodriguez felt the last vestiges of her old life crumbling. "What do you want?" "Justice," Sofia said simply. "The kind my father was too scared to seek. The kind the system won't give us because the system is corrupt." The video call ended, leaving Rodriguez staring at her own reflection in the black screen. Her phone buzzed one final time. "Now you understand. The game has changed, detective. Choose your side carefully." Rodriguez stared at the black laptop screen until her eyes burned, willing Sofia's face to reappear. The silence in the Escobar house felt alive now, pregnant with secrets that had been festering for 15 years. She closed the laptop with shaking hands and walked to the front window, peering through the blinds at her patrol car across the street. The neighborhood looked exactly the same as when she'd arrived. Suburban normalcy wrapped around a rotting core. An elderly man still watered his dying lawn. Children's laughter drifted from a backyard somewhere. But Rodriguez could feel the weight of invisible eyes watching her, calculating her next move. Her phone rang. Captain Morrison's name flashed on the screen. "Where are you, Rodriguez?" "Following up on the Escobar case." "I thought I made myself clear. That case is closed." Morrison's voice carried an edge she'd never heard before, sharp with something that sounded like panic. "The FBI's already packed up his evidence. They're calling it suicide. End of story." Rodriguez watched a black SUV with tinted windows cruise slowly down the cul-de-sac. It didn't belong in this neighborhood of soccer mom minivans and contractor pickups. What happened to the money? What money? The $1 million Marcus brought in yesterday. Where is it now? The silence stretched long enough for Rodriguez to hear Morrison's labored breathing. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Come back to the station. Now, don't talk to anyone. Don't stop anywhere. Just come straight back. Captain..." "Carmen, listen to me. I've known you for 12 years. You're a good cop, but you're in over your head. Some fights you can't win." The black SUV had parked 3 houses down. Rodriguez couldn't see the driver, but she could feel their attention like heat from a flame. "Who got to you?" "Nobody got to me. I'm trying to save your life. The way you saved Marcus's life?" Morrison's sharp intake of breath told her everything she needed to know. He was already a dead man walking. The moment he decided to talk, he signed his own death warrant. Don't make the same mistake. Rodriguez ended the call and moved away from the window. She needed to get out of this house, but more than that, she needed to think. Sophia had orchestrated something elaborate: fake kidnapping, planted evidence, theatrical video calls. But the girl was 17 years old, living on her own since yesterday morning. She couldn't maintain this level of deception indefinitely. The house phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the afternoon quiet. Rodriguez found it in the kitchen, an old cordless model sitting in its charging cradle. She stared at it for 3 rings before picking up. "Detective Rodriguez." The voice was male, older, with the flat authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "We need to talk." "Who is this?" "Someone who can make your problems go away." "There's a warehouse at 1247 Paisano Drive. Come alone. No radio, no backup, no clever ideas about recording devices. And if I don't, then your daughter Maria never makes it home from Jenny's house tonight." The line went dead. Rodriguez stood frozen in the Escobar kitchen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Through the window, she could see the black SUV's engine running, exhaust shimmering in the heat. She thought about Marcus Escobar's face in that interrogation room yesterday, the relief in his eyes when he'd finally started talking. He'd known this moment was coming, had probably been expecting it for 15 years. The only surprise was that it had taken this long. Rodriguez walked back to the living room and reopened Sophia's laptop. The screensaver had activated, showing a slideshow of family photos. Marcus pushing a young Sophia on a swing set. The two of them hiking in the desert mountains outside El Paso. Sophia's quinceañera, her father spinning her around the dance floor while she laughed. No photos of corruption or cartel money. No images of the blood and betrayal that had funded their quiet suburban life. Just a father and daughter who loved each other, right up until the moment everything fell apart. Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. "All units be advised. Detective Carmen Rodriguez is to be considered armed and potentially dangerous. Approach with caution." Last seen in the Cielo Vista area driving Unit 47. She stared at the radio clipped to her belt, her mind struggling to process what she'd just heard. In 12 years as a cop, she'd never been on the wrong side of that kind of alert. Now her own department was hunting her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Maria. "Mom, there are men asking about you at Jenny's house. I'm scared." Rodriguez ran for the door, leaving Sophia's laptop open and the house phone off its hook. As she reached her patrol car, the black SUV's doors opened and 2 men in dark suits stepped out. They didn't draw weapons or shout commands. They just watched her with the patient confidence of predators who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. Rodriguez started her engine and backed out of the driveway, her mind racing through options that all led to the same dead end. The warehouse on Paisano Drive, the place where good cops went to become corpses or collaborators. She chose neither. Instead, she drove toward Maria's school, toward whatever remained of the life she'd built on the fiction that justice and law enforcement were the same thing. Behind her, the black SUV followed at a respectful distance. Rodriguez reached Jefferson High School as the last bell rang, releasing a flood of teenagers into the scorching afternoon. She scanned the crowd for Maria's face, while her radio continued its steady stream of updates about the manhunt for an armed and dangerous detective who happened to be herself. Maria emerged from the main building walking with Jenny Martinez, their heads bent together in the conspiratorial way of 17-year-old girls sharing secrets. Rodriguez felt a stab of grief for the ordinary mother-daughter relationship she'd never be able to give Maria. No quiet conversations about boys or college applications, no normal worries about curfews and driving tests. Everything in their lives was filtered through the reality that mommy carried a gun and made enemies for a living. Rodriguez intercepted them near the parking lot. "Maria, we need to go. Now." Her daughter's face shifted from surprise to fear as she registered her mother's expression. "Mom, what's wrong? Those men at Jenny's house." "I'll explain in the car." Rodriguez glanced at Jenny, a sweet kid whose biggest concern should be passing chemistry, not getting caught in the crossfire of police corruption. "Jenny, call your parents. Tell them to pick you up here, not at home. Stay with friends tonight. The girl's eyes widened. Is this about drugs? My dad says there's cartels everywhere now, but I thought, just call them. Rodriguez guided Maria toward the patrol car, her eyes constantly sweeping the school grounds. Trust me. As they drove away from Jefferson High, Rodriguez caught Maria staring at her in the rearview mirror. At 17, her daughter had inherited more than just Rodriguez's dark eyes and stubborn chin. She'd also developed the cop's ability to read fear in people's faces. Mom, are you in trouble? Rodriguez took a breath, trying to figure out how to explain 15 years of buried corruption to a teenager. Do you remember what I told you about Uncle Miguel? Maria nodded. Rodriguez had never lied to her about the family history, just simplified it. Miguel had been Rodriguez's younger brother, a good kid who'd gotten mixed up with bad people and died in a police raid when Maria was 2 years old. What I didn't tell you is that Miguel wasn't just dealing drugs. He was paying cops to look the other way, judges to dismiss cases, prosecutors to lose evidence. Rodriguez turned onto Alameda Street, heading toward nowhere in particular. People who were supposed to protect the community, like you, like me. The words tasted like ash, except I never took their money. I just never asked the right questions when cases disappeared, never investigated when witnesses changed their stories. I convinced myself I was staying clean by staying ignorant. Maria was quiet for several blocks, processing this information with the careful intelligence that reminded Rodriguez of herself at that age. Finally, what changed? Yesterday, a man named Marcus Escobar walked into my interrogation room with $1 million and a confession. He'd been keeping quiet about the corruption for 15 years, taking payments to stay silent about his brother's murder. Rodriguez stopped at a red light and finally met her daughter's eyes in the mirror. His daughter found out, just like you're finding out now. The light turned green. Rodriguez drove toward the warehouse district, knowing she was probably making the biggest mistake of her life, but unable to see any other choice. The men who came to Jenny's house, they want me to stop investigating, she continued. They want me to bury Marcus's evidence and pretend none of this ever happened. Will you? The question hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. Rodriguez thought about Marcus Escobar's daughter, 17 years old and orchestrating elaborate schemes for justice, about Sophia's eyes blazing with righteous anger as she'd explained her father's crimes, about the photographs in their living room, a normal family built on blood money and compromise. No, Rodriguez said finally, I won't. Her radio crackled again. Unit 23, respond to domestic disturbance at 1247 Paisano Drive. Possible shots fired. 1247 Paisano Drive. The warehouse address the voice on the phone had given her. Rodriguez pulled over and turned to face Maria directly. I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to drop you at Aunt Teresa's house. You're going to stay there until this is over. What if it's never over? The question hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. What if the corruption was too deep, too entrenched? What if Sofia Escobar's elaborate plan for justice was just a 17-year-old's fantasy, doomed to end the same way her father's confession had ended, with a bullet and a cover-up? Rodriguez started the engine again. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, some things are worth fighting for, even if you can't win. As they drove toward Teresa's house, Rodriguez couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus Escobar had said something similar to his daughter, right before he'd walked into that police station with his blood money and his broken dreams of redemption. Rodriguez dropped Maria at Aunt Teresa's apartment complex, watching through her rearview mirror until her daughter disappeared safely behind the security door. Teresa had asked no questions. She'd grown up in the same neighborhood as Rodriguez, where sudden family emergencies requiring safe houses were part of the landscape. The warehouse district stretched ahead like a graveyard of industrial dreams. 1247 Paisano Drive sat at the end of a dead-end street, its loading docks empty, windows dark. Rodriguez parked 2 blocks away and walked, her service weapon heavy against her hip. The front entrance stood slightly open. Rodriguez pushed through, her eyes adjusting to the dim interior. Afternoon sunlight filtered through grimy skylights, illuminating dust motes that danced like ghosts above the empty concrete floor. Detective Rodriguez. The voice echoed from the warehouse's far corner, where a makeshift office had been constructed from shipping containers. "Thank you for coming." Rodriguez moved toward the voice, every instinct screaming ambush. But as she rounded the containers, what she found wasn't armed men or corrupt officials. It was Sofia Escobar, sitting at a folding table with a laptop computer and several manila folders spread before her. "You're supposed to be kidnapped," Rodriguez said. Sofia looked up with her father's dark eyes, but where Marcus had carried the weight of 15 years' guilt, his daughter burned with righteous fury. "I was never kidnapped. I staged my own disappearance to force my father into action. The ransom demand, the threats, all me." Sofia gestured to the laptop screen, which showed multiple social media accounts, anonymous email addresses, even a voice modulation program. Amazing what you can do with basic technology and a lot of anger. Rodriguez approached the table cautiously. The manila folders contained photocopies of bank statements, wire transfer records, meeting transcripts, a paper trail documenting years of systematic corruption. Names she recognized: Judge Vance, who dismissed dozens of drug cases on technicalities; Prosecutor Hayes, whose conviction rate had mysteriously plummeted after Miguel's death; Captain Morrison. "Your father was trying to protect you," Rodriguez said. "My father was protecting himself." Sofia's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of the 17-year-old girl beneath the elaborate deception. "Do you know how I found out? College application essays. I was writing about growing up as the daughter of a DEA hero, researching my family history for dramatic effect." She pulled out a photograph, Marcus and Miguel Escobar as young men, both wearing DEA windbreakers, both smiling at the camera. Brothers in arms before everything fell apart. Except when I started digging into Uncle Miguel's case, nothing made sense. Miguel wasn't just some dealer who got caught in a raid. He was trying to expose the corruption when they killed him. My father wasn't the hero who brought him down. He was the traitor who sold him out. The warehouse seemed to grow colder around them. Rodriguez stared at the photograph, remembering Marcus's confession yesterday, the relief in his eyes when he'd finally started talking. Not the relief of a guilty man seeking redemption, but the relief of a man whose lies had finally collapsed. "The $1 million, Rodriguez said slowly. "It wasn't Marcus's money. Payment for services rendered. 15 years of keeping his mouth shut about who really ordered Miguel's death." Sofia closed the laptop with a sharp click. "My father took their money every month, convinced himself he was just surviving. But Miguel died because Marcus told them Miguel was going to the FBI." Rodriguez felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Every assumption she'd made about Marcus Escobar, every moment of sympathy she'd felt for his supposed guilt, all of it built on lies. Why confess now? Why bring the money to the police station? Sofia's smile held no warmth. "Because I told him I knew the truth. I gave him 24 hours to turn himself in, or I'd release everything to the media." She gestured to the folders on the table. Bank records showing payments from Judge Vance's personal account, email chains between my father and Prosecutor Hayes, audio recordings of Captain Morrison discussing which cases to bury. "You've been planning this for 3 months. I've been planning this since I was 12 years old, and my father told me Uncle Miguel was a drug dealer who deserved to die." Sofia stood up, and Rodriguez could see Miguel's stubborn determination in the set of her shoulders. "The difference is, 3 months ago I finally had the evidence to do something about it." Rodriguez stared at the girl across from her. 17 years old, living alone since yesterday morning, orchestrating the downfall of half the law enforcement officials in El Paso. "What happens now?" "Now you choose," Sofia said simply. "Walk away like every other cop who discovered the truth over the past 15 years, or help me finish what Uncle Miguel started." The warehouse fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic on Paisano Drive. Rodriguez thought about Maria, safe at Teresa's apartment but growing up in a world where justice was just another commodity for sale. About Marcus Escobar, whose real crime wasn't taking cartel money. It was getting his brother killed for trying to do the right thing. "What do you need?" Rodriguez asked.